He have gone cold. Ginobili on the finish. Flushes it with the left hand.
Here's Harden. Ginobili's on him. He's got shot. What a play by Ginobili! Knocked it away. San Antonio wins
On the shot clock. Ginobili steps back, tries a three. Manu Ginobili, 14 points off the bench. Second, Ginobili. Oh, he banks it in. They count it. They count it, and Argentina wins.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Basketball Passport. I'm your host, Leigh Ellis, and I'm joined by Lakers Lounge and general Lakers insider, Anthony Owen. How you doing, man?
I'm holding up. I'm really excited for this. Your experience around the world with basketball is second to none, and I'm really happy that I get like the front row seat. You know, I'm the first on the airplane, and you're just going to take me wherever it goes.
That's right, man. That's right. That's exactly what it's going to happen here. It's called Basketball Passport, where we're going to discuss events and activities from around the world, and from time to time, hopefully, have a few guests on as well from different parts of the world, so they can sort of tell us about what basketball is like in their city and country. It's going to go live every Thursday, or live-ish, at 10 a.m., and we want everyone, of course, here to be a part of it. That's in addition to our weekly show on Sunday nights or Monday mornings, which will be an NBA show, talking about the big stories and the issues in the league. I mean, Anthony, again, you were the one who had the official scoop on JJ Redick before anyone else, the confirmation, Anyway, so hopefully we'll break a bit of news on that podcast Sunday nights.
Yeah, I was that was a long few days while everybody was calling me a fraud because I had it before Shams and Woj.
You did, man. You did. I mean, I know Shams probably led it there, but you had the confirmation before anyone else. So well done to you, man.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/basketballpassport, or the Lakers Lounge as well, or my personal one, which is Leigh Ellis 76. I'll be uploading my content there. Our social handles, Anthony Owen LA on Twitter. You're not really on IG though, are you, Anthony?
No. I try to limit my social media to
it's
or
tough.
if I do IG stuff, it's more like personal family stuff, and nobody cares to see that.
Yeah. So if you've got a question or comment, hit us up at this beautiful Gmail address, basketballpassportpod@gmail.com. So we got the intros out of the way. Now we're going to start actually with a little bit of sad news from the basketball world, not just the international basketball world, when earlier this week we lost the legend, Dikembe Mutombo, who passed away sadly due to brain cancer. I was down at Hawks media availability actually on Monday morning when the news broke. And of course, he was a legend of the game. But one of the things I think about Mutombo that, talks to him as the person most is that for all his accomplishments on the court, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, 8-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, everyone who ever interacted with Dikembe just talks about how much of a great person he was and a great humanitarian he was. And, that's the saddest part, that there's very few celebrities, athletes, NBA players who are just universally loved. But I think Dikembe is actually someone who falls into that category.
100%. Absolutely. He was just an absolute titan of an entire region of the world, right? He represented that, and he was so proud about the steps forward that basketball in Africa had taken. And when he retired, he devoted a huge portion of his career earnings to building a hospital. He's one of those rare people who really takes it upon himself to make the world a better place and improve everything around him. And can't say enough about the guy, and also had a real great sense of humor about himself too.
Man.
He was just a delight, a true delight.
Can you imagine how many times he got asked to do that? No. And every time he did it, and he did it with the same energy as if it was the first time, that someone had asked him. And, obviously TV commercials, anytime he made an appearance on any sort of show, he was asked to do it and he did it. I got to meet him a couple of times myself. And again, he doesn't know who I am from a bar of soap, but he would always make you feel like he knew you, and he made you feel like, oh yeah, you're a friend. And you're like, wow, how can this guy who gets so much adulation and attention no matter where he goes in the world, have that ability to make everybody feel like they are the sort of the one person that Dikembe was kind of like, yeah, but you're secretly one of my closest friends.
Yeah, just that ability to just kind of shrink a room and make it as if you're the only person talking to him. Just an incredible person. Really, really a shame that we lost him so early.
And I think this image from the 1994 playoffs, 30 years ago, when the Nuggets, as the number 8 seed, came back against the number 1 Seattle Supersonics, down 2-0 in the series. And then Dikembe just absolutely turned it on. They came back and win in 5. First time a number 8 has upset a number 1. And that iconic image at the end, Dikembe on the ground clutching the ball. I said this is one of the most iconic images of the 90s, but I think overall it's really one of those most iconic images in NBA history because he was still very young. The Sonics were, of course, an incredible team and were cruising in that series, and then Dikembe turned it around.
Yeah, and again, the level of basketball that you need to play individually to allow that kind of an upset to take place, and then the unfettered joy afterward, and that's just how he lived his life. Like that, the part of that image that lives on is that he maintained that level of joy, that amount of just passion for life for the rest of it. And it was just, and it makes that moment even greater, knowing how great a person it was. And to see a great person that kind of happy, it was just an awesome, awesome moment.
And even George Karl, I remember I talked to him about it one day, and obviously he was the coach of the Sonics, devastated, it's a crushing loss, but he sort of, his admiration and affection for Dikembe kind of soothed that pain somewhat because he was like, hey man, we lost to a great player and a great man. And, that's one of those iconic moments in sports where to have a, euphoric victory, you have to have a devastating loss. And that's what it was for the Sonics. They were crushed, but, for the Nuggets and for Dikembe, it was a huge, huge moment. Do you think of Dikembe, as a Hawk, as a Nugget, as a 76er, Rocket? I mean, where would you sort of put him in that if you had to pick one team for him?
I would probably say the Sixers, oddly. Obviously Kobe behind me here. So I look back on that three-peat era. And the thing that I kind of remember about it is like he was the defensive player of the year. And Shaq was at his absolute peak of his powers. And Shaq, if you ever watch him play, you look at the guys who were defending him. And they all look so battered after the experience. But Mutombo goes through that. Shaq, obviously, and the Lakers wind up winning the series. But afterward, it was just kind of the utmost respect that he had for Shaq afterward. It was just like, that guy's really good. He outweighs me by 150 pounds. What am I supposed to do? And again, like maintaining that joy for competition, the joy for the moment, and again, life in general, that it's you could really link those two pictures, the image of Dikembe holding the basketball after beating the Sonics, and then also how he felt about being sharing the court with greatness in the moments that he did in that series. So I think of him as a Sixer because of my Lakers background, but I like, that's the crazy thing, and to the point that you made earlier, Leigh, he makes every single person, or made every single person, feel like they're the only person in the room. So if you're a fan of the Nuggets, if you're a fan of the Hawks, if you're a fan of the Sixers, he gave you his all. So he could really kind of resonate as a member of any of those organizations. Yeah.
I think for me, I think that is important though, that the Sixers go to the finals. I think that's where, he gets projected onto the, the world stage there, because that was, of course, the peak Lakers too. I mean, the Kobe Shaq prime, really. I know they won another championship after it, but I feel the Pacers won and then the Sixers won as the ones that really stood out because they played the Nets the following year, and it wasn't as that was the worst one by far.
Yeah.
But I would say, for me, it's either that or the Sonics, the Nuggets, sorry, because of that early image as well. He made it the All-Star team. It was his first team, and So a sad loss there for the NBA and for the broader world as well. I know even on CBS Sports, the soccer, they were talking about it as well. Him passing, so he certainly transcended basketball and was beloved by, again, everybody who came in contact with him, and he also had an impact on other athletes and stars. So. Our love and thoughts and condolences, of course, to the Mutombo family, and may he rest in peace. So moving on, there's another big event internationally that starts tomorrow. The teams are actually already there. They're in Abu Dhabi, and it is the Boston Celtics and the Denver Nuggets for 2 games. First one is on Friday, October 4, and then Sunday, October 6 at the Etihad Arena there. This has become pretty much a regular on the NBA calendar now. It's 3 years at least in a row where they have played the games out there. And, it's an interesting destination because the NBA used to play a lot more preseason international games. They've played in Italy and China and Japan and places like that. But they've been now there trying to establish a bit more of a base in Abu Dhabi. I mean, for yourself, it's preseason games, so obviously they don't count for anything. But do you tune in out of curiosity to sort of see what the atmosphere is like, see see how things are different being played in a country that you certainly don't automatically associate with basketball? The Middle East, doesn't really have an impact, certainly in terms of players in the NBA. I think Alaa Abdul Nabi was the first Middle Eastern-born player from Egypt there. But what do you think when you see these games in Abu Dhabi? Does it pique your interest to want to go and visit and maybe check it out?
I'm just generally curious about the world, so I'm always interested in visiting new places. To me, actually, the place that my brain first goes is how much better the rest of the world is at attending sports events than Americans, because you go to an American thing, and obviously in the moments of something big happens, you do get that pop. You get that, the crowd goes insane just like it would anywhere else. But, over the course of the game, in the moments, the crowd gets kind of drowned out by the music that's playing over the loudspeakers and stuff. And you tune into some of these games elsewhere, whether it be in this case Abu Dhabi. They try to make a point to go into Mexico every year, and obviously China is a big event for them as well, for the NBA as well. Anytime they play in Europe, you see this, or anytime you tune into a EuroLeague game, you see this, where there's chants the whole time, and the whole thing winds up being this real big party. And it makes me just kind of wish, like, hey guys, could we just take some notes? Can we try this out? Like, we don't have to be so boring over the course of the game. So it's just a more joyous event when you see these games there. And yeah, I think part of it is because there's a novelty to it. But I think in general, we need to learn to be better at that out here in the States.
Yeah, it's always good though when they go to places like that, because the teams have been there for the last couple of days and you see them out doing the things that the locals do. They were riding camels. I don't know if you saw that. and I've ridden a couple of camels in my time where I've traveled, like to Egypt and other parts of the Middle East. But it's always funny for me when you see someone like 7'1" DeAndre Jordan. His legs are just so long. And can you imagine the camel from his perspective? Like, he's usually taken, smallish people, and then all of a sudden this gigantic guy with these long legs comes up.
The camel's like, wait, we're seeing eye to eye? What is going on?
I know. Hey, listen, I'll be sure. I can't believe DeAndre's still in the league, to be honest, but he's hung on here. But he was out there having a great time, and then Westbrook as well was kind of like dancing on the back of a camel as well. I mean,
Westbrook's still trying to get over the hump.
Yeah, nice one.
Yeah, the DeAndre Jordan thing is funny because it's like, it's so easy when you see these guys on the court to just lose sight of how big they are.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so easy to just kind of, they're all out there together. They all look like Avengers, and it's so easy to just kind of get used to what these guys look in relation to. And then you see like a normal person on a camel, and you see DeAndre Jordan on a camel, and DeAndre Jordan's feet are almost dragging from the camel. You almost feel like the camel should be riding DeAndre Jordan. And it's just it's good to get those reminders of how special these athletes really are.
Yeah, no, it is. And again, I mean, that's a big part of traveling for me is you don't just want to go there and play the game and leave. You want to go and explore and get a little bit of a taste of the local
100%.
flavor and what people from different parts of the world do, because there is a huge push from the Middle East to get into EuroLeague basketball and also, to get into the NBA, or certainly have more exposure, because the 2027 Basketball World Cup is going to be in Qatar there, where the Soccer World Cup was a couple of years ago. So, as I say, there's not tons of basketball talent that is obviously coming out of the region, but potentially, I suppose, by investing in more basketball related stuff, you're going to get more interest and hopefully get some development there. But it's quite a contrast anyway when you see those guys out there like that and having fun. But it's good to see.
It's only a matter of time too that we're going to get Emirates money in the NBA. They're going to own a team at some point soon.
Well,
the
that's
Celtics
right.
are literally for sale right now.
Yeah.
I can't help but draw the line between those 2 points.
Of course, because I think the rules are you can't have any more than, I think it's 5% foreign investment, but money talks. And we've seen, especially like in the English Premier League in soccer, there is a ton of Middle Eastern investment in teams. And so they've got money and they are apparently looking to invest in the EuroLeague as well, apparently $1 billion there. So they've got the cash. There's no question about that. And if they've got the cash, then I have a feeling as well the rules might loosen somewhat to allow some foreign investment. But just going back to what I was saying as well before, I mean, I remember this is back in 1992. This is the Sonics and the Rockets playing in Japan. Now, these were regular season games to tip the season off, 32 years ago. And as I mentioned, the NBA used to play a lot more games of actual, that actually counted as far as regular season games abroad. I mean, it goes back to 1990. In Tokyo, they played a lot in Tokyo, some in Mexico City, and then more recently they've been doing the mid-year sort of one where we're going to see it, of course, this year when it's the Indiana Pacers and San Antonio Spurs playing 2 games in Paris. Obviously, it makes sense to have the Spurs there with Victor Wembanyama playing. But, the NFL, you probably know actually this better than me. I know they played a game in Brazil to start the season, and they're always seemingly playing in London. I think they play in Germany too, don't they? Regular season games.
Yeah, my Vikings play in London this upcoming Sunday. It's really nice. You wake up 8:30 tip, or 8:30 kickoff, and you wake up and we watch it back, out back on our back patio, have some coffee. At halftime, maybe pour a mimosa. It's nice. And if I were the NBA, I'd be a little nervous about how much effort the NFL is making to become more of a global sport, because the NFL already dominates locally, domestically.
Yes.
If they become more popular globally, there's very little economy left for the rest of the world, frankly. So, I think, you make a great point. It used to be actual games. And I believe last year they played in Mexico City for an actual game.
Yeah, so they play Mexico City and Paris because I was there for that one, the Hawks and the Magic. But they should be more. I agree.
Yeah.
And if the NFL can do it, and I know the NBA is slightly different. They have obviously more games. The NFL, once a week, perhaps from a planning perspective, it's not as difficult. But I think, again, with a little bit more foresight, you take some games out there, because you're right that at that market share, if the NFL can sort of take a crack into the international market share, that will be huge for them, because there's no real NFL market share out there internationally. I mean, certainly not like the NBA. And the one thing that basketball has over football in that sense is, I've never seen any kids in a park anywhere in the world ever just throwing a football around, like they're kicking the ball or they're playing basketball or whatever. So there's not like, kids development or anything like that. But again, the mere presence of the NFL is going to pique interest, and the NBA shouldn't get complacent in that respect, because these, so many countries now and cities have the facilities and the infrastructure to host games. Traveling is not a concern when you're flying private, charter. And there is such a thirst and demand for, NBA real games as well. That's the thing is, it's fine to have preseason games, but it would be so much better if the games actually had some stakes in them as well, so that the players are going to give it their all. So it'd be interesting to see if the NBA does react to this somewhat and try to place a few more games around the world, because especially the way they're doing the scheduling now, where you're playing a couple of games against the same opponent in the same city in that sort of baseball style, where you might play, the Lakers might play Phoenix, let's say, twice in 3 days or whatever. So take one of those series maybe, to somewhere else in South America, for those Western Coast teams, South America or Mexico. And then for the East teams, there's so many places in Europe you could go and share it around. And again, South America, Central America, I mean, it's not tough to do. I just think, and I would love to see the NBA do more of it, but we'll see.
An All-Star weekend somewhere.
Oh, that would be unreal, especially now because they have those like 3 or 4 days off after the All-Star game.
Yeah.
Take the All-Star weekend, make it a 4 or 5 day event in Barcelona or anywhere in Europe to start with. If you took that to Athens or Belgrade, it would be incredible. It would be so cool, And again, I know there are some logistical challenges involved, but nothing that's insurmountable. You could get there. You just need to say, okay, we're going to change the schedule around this year. Again, by a couple of days either side, we're going to get everybody out there, fly everybody out there on the same plane, and or it'll take a couple of planes, but you could do it, and they would absolutely love it in Europe, because people would travel from all over Europe to wherever it was to be there, and it would be such a great celebration of basketball, and it'd be a great way for the NBA to sort of reestablish its dominance in that respect as well, like we're talking about, because as I say, you don't want to concede any ground here, because if it does take off, then we, like as you say, there's no question NFL is the most dominant sport in this country, but the NBA, it's the opposite outside of this country, but you just don't want to you don't want to give them a chance or any opportunity, I suppose, to take any of that market share.
Absolutely. Yeah, they've already lost Christmas. The NFL is already taking Christmas. It's on a Wednesday this year, and the NFL is going to play games there.
Is it?
And yeah,
wow.
We'll see how that goes. But the NBA, like, remember they moved inside the NBA, the games that they used to always be Thursday nights, and then if NFL started playing games Thursday nights, and they moved early season national TNT games to Tuesday. So the inside the NBA guys would be talking on a Tuesday instead of a Thursday. It's the NBA is already moving pretty scared of the NFL, and if the NFL starts getting more, like you said, market share outside the states, then the NBA might be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah. Well, moving on from the NBA, but staying in Europe, because EuroLeague season 25 kicks off today, this afternoon. We have got some really nice matchups. The best one, I think, is Fenerbahce and Olympiacos. That's tomorrow, actually. So, I'm very excited. I've gotten into EuroLeague the last couple of years. I've been out to several games out there and really got a bit more of an understanding of what it is. Here are the teams there. You can see there are 18 teams that make up EuroLeague, and this is I'll just explain it in case I'm sure you don't fully understand how it all works. There's 18 teams across Europe that make it into this league, and this is in addition to their domestic league. So in that sense, it would be like the Lakers play the Warriors on a weekend, and then during the week the Lakers would say go to play the best team in Mexico or Canada or whatever. Now, obviously, it doesn't really work like that because there's no comparative league to the NBA anywhere in the world. But in Europe, the league between from Greece to Spain to Serbia to Italy, it's like Champions League soccer if you follow that at all, where the best domestic leagues play within their own leagues, usually on the weekends, and then during the week they play. You might see a Manchester United versus Barcelona, or Real Madrid versus, Olympiacos or someone like that. I mean, it's an awesome competition because it brings together so much more than just rivalries of basketball on the court. You think of rivalries within the United States, from California to New York to Chicago to Florida. Like everyone's feels that they've got something about their state and their city that's the best in the country. Well, then you combine all that in with thousands of years of history in Europe, with music and food and art and culture and fashion and whatever it is you want, and it all comes together on the basketball court, and it's a really, really good competition. So there's 18 teams. They play each other once home and once away throughout the season, and so it's a 34 game season. So that's another thing that I really like about EuroLeague, that, in the NBA, I know we've talked about it as well before, that, you play some teams 4 times, some teams 3 times, and some teams 2 times. And the balance of the schedule is just crazy, and you see it in the playoffs where, some teams, let's say in the Eastern Conference, might be 4 or 5 games below 500 and they'll make the playoffs, whereas a team in the West could be 5 games over and they miss out. And it's like, that sucks, So yeah. At least with EuroLeague, what happens is, everyone plays each team once home and once away. And then at the end of the season, the top 8 teams go to the playoffs. And this is where it gets really cool and really funky and really different. So you play 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, et cetera, in a best of 5 format. Okay. And so it's, as you can imagine, it's 2, 2, and 1 to decide it there. But then the 4 winners of those playoffs go to the final 4 and then play off exactly in the same way as a March Madness NCAA tournament Final 4, where the 2 winners of the 2 elimination games then play off in the final. So it's an unusual process in that you have multiple game playoff series followed by sudden death. But it's very, very exciting because also there are fewer playoff games. A 7-game format is fine for a lot of playoff series, but not for all of them, especially the first round in the NBA. I would like them to go back to best of 5. But, later on, I think 7 is fine. But this is what I love about EuroLeague, that, they have the playoffs and then they have a March Madness style Final 4. And I mean, again, it's incredible, like just how tight these series are, and then how it leads into the Final 4, which is in a neutral venue too, which makes it great. So it's a bit like the Super Bowl, it's planned a year or so in advance. So if one of those teams happens to be in the Final 4, they get a huge advantage from the home team, from the home fans. But generally, it's a neutral venue, which makes it, I think really exciting, because then there's no home court advantage. I mean, how does that sound to you?
Terrifying, for one. But my question is, like, the NBA is trying to get their in-season tournament off of the ground, and I think this year it's going to be called the Emirates tournament, right? Speaking about that money making its way into the league. But I'm curious about how long did it take for EuroLeague to really kind of catch on? Because the NBA, like, I think the American fan is a little bit more cynical about these kinds of things. I think there was some interest in in-season tournament. I think a lot of it was kind of muddled by how long of an explanation it took. This game counts for regular season. This game doesn't. This game, whatever. The championship game of the in-season tournament not counting when the run-up games did, I think, was a little weird for people. But how long in those regions did it take for this thing to really legitimately matter to the fans?
Not that long, because it really goes back like 60 years. The EuroLeague itself is only 25 years old, but the sort of competition and the format dates back, to the sort of 50s and 60s. It's kind of been reworked a few times to try to make it to what it is now. And the ironic thing is, the Soccer Champions League used to be more a pools format, where you would be like, there's 4 teams in each group, and then the winners of each group would go to a knockout phase. Well, the Champions League soccer is now sort of switched to make it more a EuroLeague style competition, where now there's more teams. I think there's 32 teams, and they play each other in a similar way. So they've actually, incredibly, the soccer style format has adjusted to the basketball style. So that's quite interesting. But, that's the thing. Basketball, European basketball, it didn't start 25 years ago. It's been going for a long time. It's just they figured out this format. And I think what's really happened in the social media era, especially in the last few years, we've seen some of those images and the footage and the videos from those games where there's flares in the stands and people going crazy, and that has sparked interest from people like saying, like, what is this? Is this their regular season? Like you're seeing, Real Madrid maybe in Athens playing against Panathinaikos, and it's like, why are they even playing? What's this for? And so now, and again, with all those histories and rivalries throughout Europe, this is just another one to add to it. And obviously football is still the biggest sport in Europe, but those histories and rivalries have carried over into the basketball world. And there's obviously been so many players who have made a career in Europe and then come to the United States. Guys like Jasikevicius, Milos Teodosic, Marcelo Huertas, the Brazilian. You of course know him from his Lakers stint there. Didn't go all that well. Didn't go all that well, but Pablo Prigioni. I mean, Manu Ginobili didn't come to the NBA until he was 26. He played out there in Bologna. So the standard of play in the competition has been good. It's not the same level of the NBA, and it never will be in terms of the pool of talent, because most players, there's still desire to make it to the NBA, but it is getting better and better simply because basketball around the world is getting better and better. We saw in Paris only a couple of months ago the best men's Olympic tournament that I've ever seen. It was just every game seemed to have star players, NBA talent players playing against each other, and they were really great, high quality games. I mean, look what it took for the best US team in a long time to finally win that gold medal. I mean, it took one of those performances from Steph Curry, one of his career performances in the end, to see off France. So, this is what EuroLeague is continuing to grow and to become better at. And, we're seeing it now that because of what's happened, I think, again, in the last couple of seasons, people are really starting to notice that it's a great league. There's a lot of talent, and the stakes, this is what's probably maybe the most important part. The stakes are high in every single EuroLeague game. You don't cruise along. You're not like, it doesn't matter if we lose 5 or 6 games in a row. That could end your season. So that, I think, combined with the fan involvement and the fan experience, has really created more interest, because people are like, I want to experience what I see there at a game, where you see like just that wave of people, when you see like the arena, it feels like the arena's
insane.
Yeah. And it looks like it could sort of collapse at any minute. And that's like on a Tuesday, in October or November, and people are like hanging on the edge of their seat for the result of just a regular season EuroLeague game. So I think it's fascinating. And I know, again, we've talked about this, like, that part of it, while the NBA has the better talent, the fan experience is really what the NBA would love to be able to, take and put into NBA games.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the number of European players or domestic players who, fared well in EuroLeague and then made their way to the NBA. But actually, I kind of wonder, as the NBA kind of is reaching its breaking point in terms of overall talent, you're seeing some guys. I think Patrick Beverley is playing on an Israeli team, and there are several players out there who are making their way out from the NBA who probably they're probably fringe NBA players at best, but rather than kind of sitting at the end of the bench, they're giving them. I think Kemba Walker, right? Just went and played in Europe as well.
Monaco. He was at Monaco. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm kind of wondering, what the impact of NBA players actually going that way has had on EuroLeague.
Yeah, well, there's another one. Jabari Parker had a really good season at Barcelona last year. And I mean, guys like Patrick Beverley, I think he kind of wore out his welcome across the NBA. That was part of the reason he was out there. Kemba Walker, another one whose sort of injuries and kind of caught up to him. He actually retired. He finished. He played only one season there at Monaco and bowed out. But, Jabari Parker's a good story because number 2 pick, 10 years ago, could score, could shoot, but his body couldn't hold up. He had a lot of injuries. Wasn't a great defensive player either, but he went there. And I think for a lot of guys like him, they were really surprised at just how passionate and how important basketball is. I think some people, there's still something of a stigma of like, well, if you're going to Europe, that means you're not good enough for the NBA. But when these guys get out there, they're like, oh my God, this is incredible. I think Dante Exum is a really good example of another guy who was out there at Partizan Belgrade a couple of seasons ago, and I saw him play. He was coming off the bench, and now he's actually had a pretty decent season there in Dallas last season, and now he's back, and he's another guy, a little bit like Jabari Parker. The injuries really took their toll. He couldn't sort of stay healthy, couldn't stay on the court, couldn't find a role. He went out to Europe and he played under coach Željko Obradović, who's a very good friend of Greg Popovich and a legendary Serbian coach. Very demanding coach, but a very, very good one. And he found a role for Dante. Dante played it really well. And then I think it was Dennis Lindsay, the former Jazz GM GM, I think it was, who was now in Dallas, was following Dante, and he said, hey, we let's give this guy a shot. And I thought he was great as a role player there in Dallas.
Lindsay, I think, drafted Exum, right?
The Jazz drafted him. Yeah, Lindsay drafted him. That's sort of the connection there. But what that point of that is it just goes to show that, maybe, it is hard when you're a fringe player to stick in the NBA, especially if you're only getting like mop-up duty. Maybe you're being bounced around to a few teams. But if you go out and prove in Europe that you can play and perform a role, and certainly in big stakes environment, then it can also ready you and prepare you a little bit more for a return to the NBA. So I think that's the thing. Dante went out there and that environment doesn't really get much tougher than playing for Partizan Belgrade. There's a couple of pretty intense teams, but I was there for the game against their vicious rival, their city rival, Red Star Belgrade. I mean, you should have seen the atmosphere there. And Dante, I spoke to him before the game, and he was, I said, how does it feel playing under this environment? He said, it's incredible. It does toughen you up. And he even said, I remember in the playoffs last year, he hit that big shot for the Mavericks. I think it was against the Celtics. And someone said, how did you prepare for this environment? He said, I played in Belgrade, man. Like, and he even sort of said, no shade to the Mavericks fans, but Belgrade is the environment that you really learn a lot about yourself and whether you're up to the, whether you can cut it with the big time. And so that was great to see him because Dante, of course, an Australian, he was hyped up a lot before the draft. I was really excited for him, but he couldn't quite stay healthy. So it's great to see him back and really thriving in the role that the Mavericks have for him.
Yeah, it was funny when Luka was coming out for the draft and there were all those concerns about like, well, he hasn't played against Duke and he hasn't played against North Carolina but he's not dealt with that kind of pressure and stuff. And you look at the environments that he did play in when he was playing for Real Madrid, right? I think he played for.
He played for Real Madrid, yeah.
Yeah, and you look at the environments that he was playing in before he got to the NBA. He was like, This is a lie. This is like playing in a library compared to some of the games that I was playing when I was a teenager. He was a teenager
that's right.
Playing there.
He was Final Four MVP at 17. I mean, Now Final Four MVP is only 2 games, but still, Real Madrid. That was the last time they won it was actually last year, 2023. In Lithuania, they won it. But before that, the last time they won it was when Luka won it in 2017. And he had guys like Sergio Llull, who you probably haven't heard that name because Sergio Llull, we've been dying for him to come to the NBA. He never did. Veteran, all-time leading Final Four scorer in EuroLeague history. Just a superstar player over there, but just someone who never really decided to come on over. And I think because guys like Jasikevicius and Teodosic had really good reputations in Europe, but they came over a little bit later in their career. I think they were 28 and 29. And I think that's one of the differences between, if you look at guys like Luka, Pau Gasol, Dirk, Tony Parker, Nikola Jokic, if you come over a little bit younger, I think it's easier for those guys to have success in the NBA, whereas some of the guys who come over a little bit later in their career, a little bit older, it's a little bit harder at that stage of your career because it's a completely different environment and the role that you may be asked to being played is not one that you can adapt to. So I think there's still, that's where some of the hesitancy and nerves come from. But I'm not going to, claim too much, but the Hawks had the chance to draft Luka. In fact, they did draft him and traded him to the Mavericks for Trae Young and 1 extra draft pick. And I was like, that's the craziest thing, man. I mean, Vlade on the Kings, though. I mean, Vlade is Serbian, of course, Now, Luka is Slovenian, which is right next door. But of all the players that Vlade should have drafted, surely he should have known that Luka was the one that was, it wasn't Andrea Bargnani they were drafting. This guy was legit. And man, what a misfire.
Did you see the quotes? He was asked about that recently. Did
Yeah,
you see Vlade's quotes?
He said we've got to wait for it to play out or something. Yeah.
I guess I guess we're still waiting, Vlade.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
Vlade,
like a famously stubborn and competitive guy, and also like extremely nice person from what I've heard too. But it kind of reminded me of like when he tipped the ball out to Robert Ory.
Yeah.
And it reached Robert.
Yeah.
Big shot. Bob knocks down that shot. I've never seen a pure swish of a basketball. Yeah. And he's like, it was lucky shot. It was lucky shot. And I'm like, I don't think it was, Vlade.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was. Yeah.
If that was the only time Robert Horry did it, maybe. But Robert Horry's got one of the best game-winning shot makes of anyone's career. His highlight reel is unreal. Yeah. But Vlade, I mean, look, talking what we're on right now, Basketball Passport. I remember when Vlade came over to the Lakers in 1990, and he had incredible talent. And it's funny because I spoke to James Worthy once. I know, Laker legend there. I had him on my old Pop and Pack segment. And I asked him what it was like when Vlade came over, because that was basically at the end of the Showtime Lakers.
Yep.
And he said, Vlade would light up a cigarette after a game in the locker room. And James Worthy's like, hey, Vlade. And he's like, what? He goes, you can't do that. Vlade's like, can't do what? He goes, you can't smoke, man. You can't smoke you can't smoke really at all, but certainly not in the locker room. And Vlade was like, why? And he's like, no, you just can't, Vlade. And then, and he said, and I said to James, I said, look, any player who comes from a different country, there's barriers, when you move to a new city, a new country, there's cultural changes, lifestyle changes, but also, like you've just got to adapt to the way things are. And I said, considering all those things, how long did it take for him to adapt to that versus how long it took him to learn the rules of the Forum Club? And he's like, he was in the Forum Club in 2 minutes. He knew what he was doing. So
that's phenomenal. The cigarettes the cigarettes from Vlade in the locker room was great. Actually, we have a mailbag portion later.
Yeah,
we have a great question here from Malcolm. We'll come back to it.
Sure,
but yeah, Vlade was. It was funny because he basically was the predecessor to Kareem, right? And Kareem had just retired, and obviously Kareem, for my money, is one of the most underrated athletes in the history of sports. And he retires, and the Lakers have this gaping hole at center, and they take Vlade, and it was actually, like, people forget this. It was actually somewhat controversial when the Lakers traded Vlade to Charlotte for Kobe, because Vlade had become such a popular player for the Lakers. My mom loves Vlade Divac.
Yeah.
And she eventually met him. My mom is a 5'0" Mexican, so she met this guy. He was sitting down, at a Lakers preseason game, and he goes and meets her, and she's like, I was standing up. He's sitting in the regular bleacher seats that you have there, and he was still taller than me. It was the craziest thing. And but no, it was Vlade is one of those, and then obviously was a pivotal figure in that Kings run.
Absolutely huge. And again, you look at guys like Jokic, the way that he plays now, not a guy who looks in great shape, throws these passes that you can't always see, has the finesse to his game. I mean, that's a lot of Vlade as well. I remember very early on in his first season there, when we started getting NBA games in Australia, and I got a couple of Lakers games, and there was this guy, 6'11", 7 foot, hitting these long 2s or 3-pointers. And it was like, is this guy really a center, or is he, what is it? It was well before the sort of point forward extension sort of guy in the league. And he had this really unusual way. He wasn't a center, but he certainly wasn't like a small forward either. Nope. So, he was one of the guys that really laid the foundation to some extent for guys, like Jokic, along with Peja Stojakovic as well. I mean, Peja is another one. Didn't look like he ever lifted a weight in his life, but you give him that shot and he was money, and those Kings and Lakers battles were unreal. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I think Pager retired at like 33 as well. He's just like, all right, I've had enough, that's it. And not someone who was like, I've got to squeeze everything out of my career. He picked up the championship with the Mavericks at the end. Man, those couple of early guys, another guy like Sarunas Marciulionis, the Lithuanian, has also sort of vibes to Manu Ginobili in the way that he plays, that sort of unusual, again, not a point guard, not a shooting guard, just a sort of unique guard. And so, the some of those players in the late 80s and early 90s really did sort of break through to give the players that we see dominating now, their first sort of insight and look into the NBA and how you can be successful rather than only being a foreign-born player that maybe, spends time coming off the bench.
Yep, absolutely.
So I talked about the EuroLeague kicking off today. There was actually an amazing event that EuroLeague used to launch their season 2025. It happened in Athens 2 Saturdays ago, and it was put together by Panathinaikos, and it was a 4-team event. We had Panathinaikos of Greece, FS Anadolu from Istanbul, Maccabi Tel Aviv from Israel, and Partizan Belgrade. And this was just a celebration of basketball to launch the season. But it wasn't just a regular game, and it wasn't just a regular environment. This is the video afterwards put together by Panathinaikos. I mean, what an atmosphere that looked like. I can't believe I wasn't there for it. I tried to go. I couldn't get there in the end. But in the old Athens Olympic arena there that was built 300 years BC. Now, they had the first Olympics there in 1896. But playing under that condition and that atmosphere, open air, 42,000 people as well there for a theoretically meaningless preseason battle of 4 teams. But my God, that looked like that's the exact sort of experience that I really think adds to the aura of European basketball. I mean, here are a couple of still images from it. Like, look at that from overhead there. And this is on the court here. And I mean, the fans going crazy, singing, chanting as if it had, real implications on what was going to happen throughout the season, but it didn't. You might have also recognized one of the players there for Panathinaikos, former Lakers legend,
Kostas, right?
Kostas Lukas.
Oh, I thought I saw Kostas and Antetokounmpo.
Oh, yes, yeah. So yeah, he's there, but also Kendrick Nunn.
Oh,
yeah.
I try to forget him.
Yeah, he didn't have a. Yeah.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
I was trying to. I to be completely honest, I thought I saw Kostas Antetokounmpo playing there, and I Googled to make sure it was the right, because I was thinking it's not Thanasis because he's still with Milwaukee, or was I think he got waived because he got hurt.
Yeah.
But no, I tried to forget the Kendrick Nunn experience.
Yeah.
Lakers fans still, because that entire season, Jeannie Buss was saying it, and Rob Pelinka was saying it, and I think Darvin Ham was saying it, or who was it, Frank Vogel? But they were like, we just have to wait till we get healthy. We can't judge this team until it gets healthy.
Yeah.
And the guy that they were waiting on was Kendrick Nunn, because he had the worst bone bruise in the history of knees.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he had a great season for Panathinaikos last season and was part of their championship winning team in Berlin in June. And he was awesome in the final too. So, I talked about Dante Exum before. If Kendrick Nunn can sort of really establish himself and stay healthy and stay consistent, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets another shot in the NBA, because Panathinaikos are the favorite going in to win it this season, to go back to back. Hasn't happened in a long time, but he was a really, really important part of that. But Yeah,
Just
man,
preferably not for the Lakers. You know, get your
but
shot. Just not.
that atmosphere, man, that environment,
It's
that
incredible.
stadium, like it was just amazing. And so last year, Partizan Belgrade played a game at an outdoor arena in Belgrade. And that was also cool. I think we talked about that. You saw the flares from people just holding them up, and you know, it looked like you were playing in a real gladiator arena there. And you know, I think they're gonna start doing this stuff more and more because fans love it, and it really shines such a great light onto EuroLeague basketball and what they're doing, because you know, doing different things, trying new things, and just creating an atmosphere that people want to be a part of. You know, that's what really stands out to me. Again, these games in Abu Dhabi, it's appealing for the city and the destination, but once you get into the court, it's going to look like any other court. You know, it's going to be really nice, great facilities, high quality, and all that. It's not going to give you a different perspective and a different feeling like what we just saw there in Athens, because again, I mean, you know, those fans there, look at that, man. This is, imagine the Lakers open practice had that many fans going crazy, because that's essentially what it was, just a glorified open practice, and the fans brought the energy.
That's incredible. It makes me think, because the NHL has their outdoor games, their outdoor classic games, and it makes me wish that the NBA was a little bit more creative with this stuff, and played a game at the LA Coliseum, played a game at Yankee Stadium, played a game at, you know, these various places. Hell, what the NBA should do, play a game at Rucker. You know, but like, go out there and put up an exhibition. You know, obviously really limit the tickets and stuff like that, because not as many people could go there. But like, just try some new stuff that isn't as kind of buttoned up as the league has tried to bend.
Well, remember Kevin Durant, like, must have been, you know, 2011 or something like that. He played at Rucker Park that night, and you know, again, the atmosphere there looked perfect.
There,
You know, and that's the thing. Obviously, again, there are some health and safety concerns, which understandably you don't want anyone to, you know, play on a surface that's not up to it. But you can make those things happen and drop a court in there and do something. That would be so cool if, you know, around about now there was an event at Rucker Park or the LA Coliseum, as you mentioned, because the Coliseum there looks similar to the one in Athens.
Yep.
And oh man, that would be so cool to see the NBA do an event like that. Again, I think do the in-season tournament like that, make the final something like that. So there's something, because you know, it's fine. It's not going to be cold in LA in when do they have the final? January, February. I mean,
yeah.
So you could do it. You could do it, especially the Olympics coming up in the next 4 years. I mean, sort of show, you know, build up and try something like that. I think it'd be unreal. But
yeah. One of my favorite memories as a Lakers fan, Jen bought me tickets. She and I were just boyfriend girlfriend at the time, and she bought me tickets because the Lakers were going to go play at the old Great Western Forum,
right? Which
was no longer Great Western because it wasn't the same sponsor. And even something like that was really cool. You know, just, you know, because you get to walk those hallways again. I actually got to check out the Forum Club. You know, I got to walk in there, and I met Bill Burtka there. Like it was really cool. Like, it was like sitting there. I'm standing there at the bar. Jim Buss was like 3 spots down from me. Stu Lance walked by, had a conversation with him. It was just like this insane thing. And I wish the NBA would do more stuff like that, because the NBA at this point has a ton of history, and there's a bunch of basketball history throughout the world. Play a game at the high school that they filmed that Hoosiers is from, you know, like, you know, Hickory High, like, you know, mess around and really try some stuff.
It would be great. Don't think it's going to happen, but the more success European teams have with these sorts of events, though, I think it is going to at least give the NBA, you know, something to think about and to look into and to see what is, you know, logistically feasible. Because again, no one came away from that experience in Athens like, what was the point of this? Like, it's a lifetime memory that, you know, may never happen again. I don't know what their plans are going forward, and maybe it was just to celebrate the 25th, you know, season. But one of those moments that again, with the proper planning and everything, you can pull it off and really make it looked like a great event. Speaking of Greece, one of my favorite countries to visit, been there several times. I was there for the Olympics in 2004. And last time I was there was 2 years ago when I first sort of left to go on this tour of playing basketball around the world, pick up basketball. And Greece, again, was one of the first destinations I chose because I know they're exceptionally passionate. And again, Athens, you never have to twist my arm to go to Athens. It's some of the best food in the world. I love the history there. A lot of people don't like Athens. They think it's a bit dirty and a bit congested and a bit crazy, but I love it. I think it's a beautiful city. The Parthenon there, of course, is iconic, and it's also the place that's given us an MVP or 2 MVPs, Giannis. And so what was really cool was he's got a court there that he grew up on in Sepolia, where he used to play. And about 5 or 6 years ago, they renovated the court in the sense that they painted. It's hard to renovate it because it's in the baking heat of Athens. So, the maintenance on it is tough to keep up because it's out there under the elements and under the conditions all the time. But it's a really cool court in a great location, and it gives you that feel of like this is a real street ball court. And so when the Bucks were here in Atlanta last year, I thought I'm going to go and talk to Giannis about it and see if I can ask him about it. And I got to chat to him. Here's a little sample of that interview.
People, whenever they go and visit Greece, they go to the Parthenon. They go maybe to Mykonos or Santorini, and then they go to see the mural, which is incredible to me. I get on my social media so many tourists that go and take pictures there and stuff. So just for people to go back and see where my story and my family story began, it's a cool feeling.
Yeah, you can check out that more of that interview anyway on my own Instagram account at Leigh Ellis, or my YouTube as well. Giannis, we chatted for about 5 minutes, and it was one of the most coolest conversations that I've had with an NBA player because after the game, especially after a loss, you just don't know what kind of mood players are going to be in, and even what sort of access you're going to have, because some players are just like, this was in March, so you can understand, you see it sometimes. Giannis didn't want to speak to the media tonight or whatever, and they just blow off the media. But when I spoke to him, it felt like I was speaking just to a friend, because he felt so joyous and he was so happy. It obviously brought back great emotions and memories for him about playing there with his brothers when he was little. He talks about how he had a fake Denver Nuggets Allen Iverson jersey. He used to get his hair cornrowed. He used to wear the sweatband like Allen Iverson. And Allen Iverson was his hero. And there's actually a really cool video. I think it's at the Hall of Fame last year or the year before, where he meets Allen Iverson, and you see them talking, and you see the little kid in Giannis like, oh my God, I love you, man. And when you think Giannis is a 2-time MVP, he's a champ, he's a defensive player of the year, in terms of accolades, he succeeded Iverson in terms of what he won, but he looked at Iverson as just his hero, and it was so cool. So you can see more of that, as I say, on my socials. But those sort of conversations I'm really going to try to get more of this year, of talking to players about the first court they played on, about their earliest memories, and not just international players. I mean, USA-born players as well, but getting people to talk about where the love of the game started and what it was like for everyone growing up playing basketball. And that one in Athens, it's really, really cool court. You should go and check it out. And it's definitely worth a trip. I mean, again, there's no reason to ever not go to Greece, but even more so, now in Athens. There's actually, from that as well, I got some people in Thessaloniki in northern Greece say, you got to come up here, and they've shared some courts as well. So hopefully I'll be back in Greece again at some point.
Same. Well, not back in, but in Greece. That sounds great. That sounds great. The part of that I don't know if it's on the longer clip that you have on your socials or whatever, but that was after I think you said that was after a loss, right? Atlanta.
I think so. I can't quite remember now, but I remember sort of feeling afterwards like, oh, I wish they won. Right. I'd have to double check, but I just know that anytime I go to try to speak to a player, I try to get them pre-game. It's a little bit harder because people have got their routines and their preps and things like that. But then post game, you're like, oh, please win. Please don't make this a blowout loss or a controversial loss where they're like, I don't want to talk to anyone tonight.
Yeah.
Fortunately here in Atlanta, the Bucks usually come twice a year, so you get a second chance. But if it's like the Lakers are only here once, so you've got that one shot to try to get to speak to whoever you want to speak to. But Giannis, I have to say, man, he's one of the. Again, it's not dissimilar to Dikembe, who we talked about off the top here, in terms of Giannis giving you his full attention. How polite he was, how he treated you. There was no diva to him. Again, it was after a game, a long season, and I'm like, hey, let's talk about your court. And I felt that it brought out something in him where he was like, yeah, man, I love talking about that. Again, especially where he talked about the Allen Iverson stuff, it was funny because I got my mum to do cornrows, and and even the bit, the fake Denver Nuggets Allen Iverson, that's so perfect because Giannis himself, growing up in Athens, I know he had to sell all sorts of things on the street just to make money. So he probably moved a few of those fake Allen Iverson jerseys, and he decided maybe to keep one for himself.
His own jersey,
his own
fake jersey. Yeah, the reason I bring that up is because these guys get so used to the same old questions, the same old conversations, the same old, how'd tonight go? Stuff, and you can see their soul leave their body as they're having that conversation again. But it's really cool to watch him just fully light up in that moment.
Yeah, it was great. So anyway, hopefully get the chance to speak to him. So you said you had a question in the mailbag. The mailbag is open.
All right, so we have a question here from the email, which is a famously easy email to remember right here at the basketballpassportpod@gmail.com. So we have a question from that, but we actually have one from the live audience. Malcolm asks, and this is a great question, I think, for you, Leigh. Malcolm asks, is Sergio Llull the biggest what if for EuroLeague players that never came over?
Man, that's a great question because I remember seeing it, like, I guess it was Olympics and World Cup basketball, him playing for Spain and being like, man, this guy is good. He's a legit player. He's calm. He's composed. He's not afraid of the big moment. And I think the Rockets had him. I think Daryl Morey had him as their rights. He's been sort of traded a few times now, but I'm really surprised he never came over. We had Sergio Rodriguez come over, who's one of his teammates, Rudy Fernandez come over as well. Now, neither of those guys maybe had quite the career they were hoping for in the NBA, but at least they gave it a shot. But Sergio stayed there in Madrid, and I think part of the reason he did is because Madrid's a great city to live in as well. And Real Madrid, everyone knows them from the soccer team, okay? One of the most glamorous soccer teams in the world. Well, their basketball team gets treated very similar in that sense, that these people are regarded as heroes and just beloved in their city. And they have high expectations as well. And Sergio has lived up to those. And, he's won a couple of EuroLeague championships last year in Lithuania. This is what's really cool. He, he's at the end of his career. He's 35 or 36 now, so he hasn't got all that long to go. But last year in the final against Olympiacos, he hadn't scored at all. And the Real Madrid trailed by 1 point with like 8 seconds to go. And Chus Mateo, there was no question the coach where the ball was going to Sergio Llull. And he came down, nice little mid-range step back, knocked in the shot, won the championship. I think that speaks to sort of the talent, the composure, and the understanding of the moment. Like, he doesn't need to score all the points, even if he was having a bad day, even if he wasn't, the shot wasn't dropping. When it comes to winning time, Sergio Llull stepped up and knocked down the shot. And, I think that's the thing for a guy like him. I'm pretty sure he's born in Madrid as well. So he sort of, he feels connected to that city in a way that is like, why would I want to leave to maybe sit on the bench in Houston or Minnesota or somewhere like that and be 9th or 10th on the roster? He can be with his family, he can be with his friends, and he's playing high-level basketball, he's getting paid well, and he's living in just a beautiful city in Madrid. So I think that's probably part of the reason he never came over. What sort of impact he would have had in the NBA, again, it's very hard to say, but I doubt he would have had the sort of career that he's probably had in Europe, because there's just so many guys like that who have been good players but haven't really been able to come over and then be that same player for, let's say the Houston Rockets. I just don't think he would have got that opportunity. So, but great to see that he, has had a successful career, that he's, loved, admired. And there's one thing about Real Madrid too. I mean, I've seen them now the last 2 Final Fours, and the other teams that come along, they come along and guys are kind of dressed more like the NBA, where they're dressed in their own fashion, their own style. Real Madrid, everyone's in a black suit, white shirt, black tie. Everyone looks like they're there ready for business. And I think, again, that sort of speaks to the expectations of the team. And then the players themselves understand, like, they're representing their state, their city, their country. And they have the highest expectations. And, they'll once again, they were favourite last season. They finished on top. They lost the final to Panathinaikos when they led big too. I was shocked. I was shocked they lost that. But that's the thing with Real Madrid. It's of the best teams you could play for in Europe, they're certainly one of them.
I was going to say that, the all-time what if that comes to my mind is actually Arvydas Sabonis, because we saw him later in his career when he had already, I believe, hurt both of his knees by the time he got to Portland. And even in that setting, going up against Shaq in those Western Conference Finals and through those Western Conference playoffs, he still gave Shaq plenty of trouble there. And so I would have, to me, I think my like all-time what if is if we would have seen Arvydas Sabonis in his prime, what kind of a player he would have been.
Oh, no question. Some of those Euro video highlights we've seen as well, where he throws the ball full court, just like, again, like Jokic we see now, where he just gets it and chucks it, and a guy's running full speed and just lands in his spot there, and he lays it up. And Sabonis as well, he could step back and hit that long 2 or 3. And one of the very, very few guys, I can't think of many, who Shaq actually couldn't just like muscle out the way. Like it was
huge.
Yeah, he was huge. He was heavy. He was big. He was wide. And, there's some footage, of course. Remember against the Pacers, I think it was Dale Davis, Antonio Davis, and Rick Smits. And Shaq was just like, they were just bouncing off him. But for the Blazers, with Sabonis there, it was like, nah, I'm not moving this guy quite as easily.
He had old man strength at that time. He was just he was so stubborn. He's like too stubborn to be moved by Shaq. He was such a fun player. Like we talked about Vlade earlier, the skilled big and stuff like that. And man, Arvydas, if we would have seen him in his prime, I think he'd be looked back on very differently from the way that he is.
Well, that's right. Again, if he was born in a different era, if he was coming over now, I think I think he would be one of those guys that, again, is a franchise building block immediately. But of course, things were different then, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that if he came to the NBA, he couldn't then play for his country at the Olympics, Lithuania there, because you weren't allowed to. I know Oscar Schmidt, the Brazilian legend, another guy who didn't come to the NBA, drafted in the 84, beautiful draft class of 84, but didn't want to come over to the NBA because it meant he couldn't play for Brazil. So things have obviously changed since then. Now, of course, since the Dream Team came along and FIBA and the IOC, I guess, changed the rules allowing pros to play.
Yep. The other question that we have here, this is from the email bag, which somebody remembered the email there. So from John in Los Angeles, first longtime Leigh and Anthony listener. Let's go Lakers. First time basketball passport emailer. So please be kind. You asked for questions and I have some. One, Leigh, how organic are your basketball travels? Do you organize anything beforehand, or you just show up and pick up runs and hope there's action? And I think they also, John also asked about which players the Lakers might target. I'll answer that one on the lounge since we're running short on time.
Yeah. No, thanks, John. Great question. First time basketball pod emailer.
First time, long time.
Yeah, and I'm first time basketball pod at gmail.com answerer. So that's great. No, they're very organic. There are times where they're so organic, I didn't even know about a court, and I've just happened to be in a city and I've turned up and started shooting around or playing. And I've had some great fun. That happened in Belgrade. I was at this incredible court at Kalemegdan Park. I had a run scheduled for a Sunday, and on the Saturday Saturday, I just went there to check out the court and all these guys playing, and I started playing with them, and it was great. But then the Sunday was more organised in the sense that I had, a few people message me. We exchanged DMs and emails and things like that, and I said, I'm going to be at Calamigdon Park at 4:00. Come on out, tell your friends, and people come out. So it's a little bit of both, and that's what I love about basketball. Pickup basketball is if you find the court and you just start shooting around, you might get a game. A game might just happen. And I always pack a ball. I always pack a pump because no matter where you are, no matter what could happen, if you've got a ball and you start shooting away, then you can have some fun and get some buckets. So it's very much a combination of both, bit of luck, bit of timing. But for the most part, when I go to a city, I try to at least have one game ready to go, and then and hopefully a few others break out along the way.
Gosh, I one of these trips, I'm going to make it with you.
Let's do it, man.
I can't really play anymore, but I would love to get out there and just see what it's like.
You'll have a great time, man. Yeah, let's do it. Let's go somewhere.
Deal.
Yeah.
Again? Sorry.
Well, speaking of going, I think that's us for episode 1 here of Basketball Passport. So thanks to everybody who has tuned in and will tune in after this one goes up. And yeah, if you've got any questions, basketballpassportpod@gmail.com. Subscribe, rate, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everyone. We'll be back here for this version of the show Thursdays, 10 a.m. Eastern. And then on Sunday night around 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll be doing the NBA recap and news breaking stories and things like that. So yeah, twice a week, be you, myself, and Anthony. So join us.
Thanks, everybody.